Joining me today is Mariah Hovland. She's a recovering stay-at-home mum who got sick of doing motherhood the right way and made the brave decision to do motherhood real. And to use Mariah's words, she added herself to her to-do list and in 2021 started a coaching business to help burnt-out mums find themselves. Mariah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I feel like this is good. I feel like this is going to change lives, and that's the goal.
Yeah, right. I totally agree. So any mums out there, get your notebook out, take notes. I think you're going to learn a lot. And even for people like me who aren't mums, there's a lot to learn. So I'm so excited to dive into this. And what I want to start with is this whole concept of doing motherhood right.
Yeah. So there is a lot of pressure available in society for parents, right? I don't want to just say mothers because it is parents in general. The default seems to be the mothers.
Yeah.
It's like that role, right? Everything sort of falls on the mother. Whether you have a supportive partner, a helpful partner, a network who helps, it still seems to fall on the mother in terms of, the pressure to do it the right way. And one of the things that really bothered me, I had my first child when I was 27. It was 2015. And I mean, I was a new mom. I didn't know what I was doing. And I had a baby with four of my girlfriends. We all started families the same year. And
Wow.
none of us had the same pregnancy, and none of us had the same marriage, and none of us had the same newborn. And it was like all this advice on social media and from your mom and your mother-in-law, and just like this pressure to do it the right way. But none of us knew what we were doing, and we were all sort of bouncing ideas off of each other and trying to determine what the right way is. And it wasn't helpful. It actually, it was bad. This idea that if you're not breastfeeding, then you're ruining your child. Or if you are not staying home with your child, so if you don't give up your career and stay home with your child, you're a monster if you send your kids to daycare. I mean, I think like the natural chemicals and the organics and all of the safe ingredients, that sort of was circulating around the same time. So then it was, well, are you using the right laundry detergent? Are you using the right bath soap? Are your, swaddle blankets made out of the right cotton? It was a lot. And it wasn't just the logistics of, what bottles are you using? What blankets are you using? Are you letting your baby sleep with you? Are you letting it sleep in the crib? It was also like this personal transformation that you go through when you grow a child with your body and then produce that child, and then you are literally responsible for keeping it alive. It's too much. The mental part of it is too much. The physical part of it is too much. The social part of it is too much. Nobody talked about that. And what I experienced as a new mom was a lot of loneliness. And I'm here to change that. I want to have those difficult conversations. I want to offer validation to the mothers who feel like they are failing every single day because they're not doing it the right way. I want to tell those moms, listen, if what you're doing is the right way for your family, then you're doing it the right way. And it doesn't matter what your neighbors are doing, and it doesn't matter what your mother-in-law says. That's sort of, where I was at when I became a mom. And it was a lot to experience. It was a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine that felt totally overwhelming.
Yeah, overwhelming is a word. One of the like cliche pieces of advice that people say to expecting parents or new mothers is cherish every moment or enjoy every minute because it goes by so fast. And I promise you, every single time somebody would say that to me, I would feel so terrible because it's like, enjoy every minute. Like, my days are the longest days of my life. And also, I can't remember anything I'm doing because it's such a blur and you're just like on autopilot. And I don't enjoy being awake all night long. And I don't enjoy that my child is colic and I don't know what's wrong. And I don't enjoy tantrums and I don't enjoy diaper changes. Like, there's the list of things that are unenjoyable in motherhood is long. And nobody talks about that. It's just posting all the beautiful pictures on Instagram and going to the zoo and baking cookies. And like, I do those things, right? I share the good stuff. But what I realized along the way, I now have 3 children and we're growing our family for a 4th. And what I have realized along the way is like, you got to share the good and the bad because it does something inside of you when you open up that, because that's when it resonates with people. And then they send you those private messages or they comment and they say, hey, thanks for sharing that. I've felt that way too. And I thought I was the only one. And getting so many of those messages is kind of like, holy crap. Like, I'm not the only one. I thought I was the only one, And then this just like, it honestly has just sort of snowballed because I've always just been very honest and very authentic about my presence on social media and especially about like motherhood because I am a stay-at-home mom. So that version of motherhood is different than the working mother, or even just like I have a partner. That's different than those people who are doing it as a single parent. So the term motherhood has a lot of categories.
Right.
And I'm just here to try to let everyone off the hook a little bit so that, we can find joy, because there is joy in motherhood and it gets lost in all of the pressure and the guilt.
So how did you move through all that pressure and guilt?
Gosh, I didn't. It's not like I woke up one day and I was like, you know what? I don't feel guilty anymore. Or I'm a perfect mother. And, like it was gradual. It was like, okay, that first year of motherhood, I'm a new mom. I don't know what I'm doing. But I knew that I wasn't the only one who didn't know what I was doing. And so there became like a certain aspect of like humor in that, right? Like fake it till you make it as a new mom, right?
Yeah.
And so that helped alleviate a little bit. What I will say is that the theme through my first, I would say, through my first 2 children. So, from 2015 through 2000 and I would say 19, I wasn't happy. I wasn't present. I was just in like go mode. And I didn't know I wasn't happy. I didn't know I wasn't present. I didn't know that I was a robot. I was just doing the next right thing, And the pandemic happened. Suddenly, everything's different. Schedules, who we can see, who we can't see, leaving the house, school. I also became pregnant with our 3rd during the pandemic.
Wow.
It was a lot. It was a lot of change all at the same time. And I was really low during that 3rd pregnancy. And I had a lot of anger. I was really angry because I'm like, why is this happening? Like, why haven't we been through enough as like mothers? And now like all of our kids are home and we're trying to teach them while we're also trying to keep the house together.
Yeah.
I'm trying to grow a child. Like there was a lot of pressure, and there wasn't the option for a babysitter. I couldn't bring anybody into my house. And my husband, who's a wonderful partner and father, he works in beer. And what was essential during the pandemic? Alcohol, unfortunately, was. So he wasn't working from home. He had more hours. He was working more. And then, it was a pandemic, or it was an election year here in the United States. And that was hard. The social issues, all of the things that were sort of tied into the 2020 election hit me pretty personally as a woman and as a mother. And it was like every single thing and all the feelings that I had and all the thoughts that I had sort of came to a head in 2020. And after I had my third baby in December of 2020, something just kind of shifted. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to feel like this. This isn't how I want to feel in my life. That was a really crucial time for me because I realized I was unhappy. I considered my life and what was making me unhappy. And then I had to move into guilt mode because, oh, Mariah, your life is so hard. You have a beautiful family. You have a husband who's supportive. COVID didn't ruin you guys physically or financially. There is a lot of really good things in my life, but I didn't feel good inside. So I made the decision to get to work and figure out, what is that? Why do you feel like this? Where is that coming from? What does it mean? Does it have to feel like this? I didn't accept that. I didn't accept that I had to feel that way.
Was that really challenging for you to actually start unpacking that?
It was really challenging because it was taking on something else, right? In a time where like my list is already full, it was taking on something else. It was a lot to explain to my husband at the time to tell him I'm unhappy with our life. Not our life, but like my role in our life. And he right away is like, well, like get a job. Like we can do daycare. You can get out of the house. You don't have to do this. You've never had to do this. And it was like, that wasn't the answer either. And it's like, it's not that I don't want to be home with our children. I just don't want to only be home with our children. I don't want to only be a mother. I want to find me again. And that is sort of where More Than Mama, my coaching business, came from, because I want every mother out there to know that, yes, being a mother is wonderful and magical and meaningful, but you are more than a mama. It can be, your family can be your everything without being your only thing. And that's what I sort of realized. And I started, like you said in the beginning, I started putting myself on my list of people to take care of, on my to-do list, because I was not thriving. And I think every mother and parent knows that if one of the parents or the mother is not thriving, like the train's going to go off the tracks at some point.
Right.
It's all going to break down.
Yeah. And so how did you make that transition from, I guess, kind of falling into motherhood or getting lost in motherhood almost? How did you make that transition from there to establishing a coaching business?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it wasn't overnight. It wasn't like, oh, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It was like, as soon as I realized that, well, first of all, as soon as I realized that the feelings that I was having and some of the symptoms that I was experiencing, I realized that it was my depression. It was my anxiety. It wasn't me. Like some of that stuff is chemical. Some of that stuff is not. Depression is never somebody's fault. Anxiety is never somebody's fault. And you can get into habits and cycles and seasons where you just live through it because there doesn't seem to be another option.
Right.
And things were in America were starting to open back up a little bit at the time. And so I was able to, I called the therapist that I was seeing virtually through the pandemic. She and I never really connected, and I didn't feel real good about it. And so I only had 1 or 2 sessions with her initially, and I actually ended care with her. And then I took a big deep dive into like the bios of like the other options for me. And I
Mm-hmm.
ended up choosing a woman, and we had a phone conversation, and we sort of aligned. And I was like, you know what? I think this is going to be good. I think I'd really like to work with you. And that was in 2021. And I actually just had my like last session with her this week because she's like, you
Wow.
have graduated. Like you are not the same person that
Wow.
you were when you walked in here. Like you're complete, like you've evolved. And
Yeah.
so the first thing that I did during that transformational period when I realized I didn't want to feel like this anymore was I took therapy really seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I made sure that I had a therapist that I aligned with. I was very honest about why I was there, and I stayed the course and I did the work. And
Mm.
what I think what keeps people stuck or prevents them from growing personally is the ability to be honest with themselves.
Right.
It's a very difficult thing to do, to look in the mirror and acknowledge some things. And I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really like what I saw, but I knew that I didn't like it. So it's like, okay, if I don't like this, I can change this. I can do better. I can be better. You know, I don't think there is a mother out there who doesn't want to be a great mom for their kids. That's not what
Right.
this was. This was I love my children, and I'm so grateful that I get to be with them every day, but sometimes I don't want to be with them. And that's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Mm.
But I didn't know it was okay. I felt like a
Right.
monster.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a great big group of people who cannot have children and struggle for years and have
Mm.
all kinds of, challenges, and it's heartbreaking. And here I am with these 3 beautiful children that I didn't have to jump through hoops to get, and I have the audacity to not want to spend all my life or all my days with them. It's a very
Right.
touchy little road there. And I needed to really get right with myself in my head and in my heart about that. And ultimately what it came down to is mindset, right?
Mm.
I had to be really honest with myself, and then I had to sort of make like some mindset shifts. Like, okay, my kids are being really difficult today. It's just today. It's not my entire life. It's not going to last forever. They're children. They're growing. They don't understand. Nobody's perfect. And so I
Right.
sort of started acknowledging that. Like, listen, you guys are having a hard time right now. I'm not handling it well. I yelled. I'm sorry that I yelled.
Mm-hmm.
But just because I'm taller than you and older than you doesn't mean I have it all figured out. I'm
Right.
not perfect. I'm a human. You're a human. You're screaming at me because you don't have your shoes on the right feet. I'm screaming at you because you won't let me help you. It's so
Yeah.
stupid. We're both mad, but like we're human, right? And
Mm.
you got to acknowledge that. And so letting myself off the hook a little bit and just acknowledging that, like, it's okay if I'm not a perfect mom. There's no such thing as a perfect mom. Like, it's not attainable because there's no such thing as a
Mm.
perfect human, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And to my children, I am the perfect mom. They think the sun shines out of every piece of my body. Like they
Yeah.
cannot wait to see me in the morning. They want to sleep with me at night. To my children, I am the world.
Mm.
And that is important to also pay attention to, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So your original question, what sort of like helped me get out of that place where I decided that I was gonna, change? Being honest with myself. really acknowledging what I was feeling, what I wanted to feel, and then doing the work to get there.
So my next big question, I
Okay,
kind of know
ready.
the answer, but I'm going to ask, has the guilt disappeared?
Has the guilt disappeared? That's a great question. I don't no, it hasn't disappeared, but it doesn't take me out the way that it used to. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. It used to be, I practice hot yoga. It's my favorite form of exercise. I started before we had children, and throughout my pregnancy journeys and, nursing my children and just being a mom, my practice has not been consistent or strong. So I've taken a lot of breaks. And one of the things that I always would try to get back into my schedule as soon as I could, like, physically do it in like a healthy way. Because when you're pregnant, my doctor's like, don't do hot yoga. And when you're nursing, it's not always comfortable because all the things. So I would start trying to get yoga back on my schedule. And if it meant that I had to miss dinner, I wouldn't go. If it meant that I couldn't put my kids to bed, I wouldn't go. Like, I would literally talk myself out of doing things that were going to make me, give me a real break and help pour into myself, fill my own cup, because I felt like a monster because I wasn't eating dinner with my family or I wasn't putting my kids to bed. That's not the case anymore because I have come to the other side of it. And I have learned that putting your kids to get to bed when you're burnt out and everyone's fighting and everyone's yelling, that's not better than missing it all together.
Right.
If my husband gets home from work and he knows that I've had a day, then me getting to step away is the best thing for everyone. So making sure that I schedule those things that I want to do for me, that make me a better Mariah, that reset me, fill me up with a joy, make me feel like I'm taking care of myself as well as everybody else in my family. Those are the things that I choose to do in spite of the little, like twinges of guilt that I feel. And so when you say, did it go away? It didn't go away. But the difference now is that I know what it is. I can recognize it. And I know how to, it's back to that mindset. You have to really think about this. Like, okay, I feel a little bit guilty. Where is that coming from? How real is that for me? Yep. How real is that for me? And then, what's the best decision for me right now? Because this is what it's about, right? Me going to yoga has nothing to do with everybody else in my family. Do I need this right now? And then, making the decision that's the best decision for me in those moments.
Yeah. Let's go back to what you just said. That question of how real is this guilt? How do you work through that? Because I feel that's probably a question not a lot of us ask ourselves.
That's one of my favorite questions to ask when I'm working with my coaching clients. Like, how real is that feeling for you? And it's definitely one that gets people thinking. And the answer to that question is always different than you think it's going to be.
Right.
How real is that for you? So when let's say I'm not, my daughter has dance practice on Tuesdays. And our whole family used to go because the club that we go to has like a gym where my one daughter can play basketball and there's like a play space for my son. So we can all kind of go hang out while my one daughter's in practice. And during this session of dance, I've stopped going. My husband just takes the 3 kids and I have that hour to sit down and read or shower or, whatever I decide to do. And I haven't felt guilty about that even one time because what am I missing? I spent my whole day with,
Right.
and they're going to have fun whether I'm there or not. I'm probably just going to sit down and watch them do whatever they're doing. I'll probably bring my book and read my book anyway, or get back to some emails or whatever. So how real is that guilt right now? Well, it's not really real at all, actually. And
Mm.
it's just like an old habit. Feeling that way is just like an
Yes.
old habit.
And how do you navigate breaking those old habits when you have a partner? Because I feel like they play a role too, right? You've
Yeah.
been doing motherhood or parenthood a certain way for so long. So how did you navigate that with your partner to find balance again?
We had, after I started working with my new therapist, one of the things that sort of kept coming up for me was how we were parenting. And like I said, it was also during the election, right? So it was like a lot of
Mm,
questions about like women's rights and, the gender equality, all of the things,
hmm.
right? And there was there was a lot during that time. There's still a lot of work to be done. Having those conversations with my husband helped me realize that not only was there some confusion on both of our parts about some of it and how we would handle some of those scenarios, how we wanted to show up as parents during those difficult conversations, how we wanted to parent if certain situations ever arose in our future. It was really important to me that we got on the same page with that stuff. Like we're raising two girls and a boy.
Yeah.
And I am a strong female and I have very liberal um, views. So
Right.
parenting is a lot, like we don't lie to our kids. We have conversations. There was a lot of conversations about Donald Trump. There was a lot of conversations about, there were days where I was crying because I was worried and afraid. And my oldest daughter would ask, what's the matter? Because they know that
Yeah.
there's an election. They're talking about it at school. They're having pretend elections at
Hmm.
school. They're doing all of the things. So it was an open discussion. And was every thing that happened a conversation? No, we protected our children from some of that. But the point is that during that time, my husband and I had to have a very honest conversation about what track we were on and if
Hmm.
it was the same one. And so we actually met with my therapist more than once and had like a couples uh, counseling. And we
Hmm.
talked about, our morals and our values and how we see our family life going and what we want for our family. And we realize that we want the same things and we're on the same page and
Hmm.
everything sort of aligned at that point. So that was really good because that was around, gosh, it's going to be 10 years next month that we've been married. So that was what, like
Mm.
around 6 or 7 years. And it was just a good idea to have a check-in at that point. And it just was sort of forced because of like my epiphany, you know? And so
Yeah.
that really helped. And I think going forward from that, my husband just really understood, okay, Mariah needs more. And
Mm.
I'm going to support her in whatever that looks like.
Hmm.
And so we are just very open with each other. I tell him, hey, I'm having a heavy day. I don't know what it is. I just feel kind of wonky today. I just need like a little extra care or extra space. And he
Hmm.
can tag in, like, do you need alone time? What, like, what is it? And
Hmm.
so that's been really good. In terms of how parenting, kind of switched because now I'm not their beck and call. I'm not the 24/7, chauffeur
Hmm.
and housemaid and all the things. I was honest. I told my kids, you guys are driving me crazy. I need to get out of the house for a few minutes. I
Yeah.
need to do something for just me. My middle daughter would cry when I would leave for yoga. I don't want you to leave. And it's like, I'm sorry you don't want me to leave, but I like yoga. I want to do something
Yeah.
that I like to do? And so just being very honest with them about how I was feeling and what I needed to feel better, and then modeling that and doing those things. I see the changes in them too,
Mm.
because it's what's the best, being an example is like the best way to help people learn, right? So
Right.
when they see their mom taking care of themselves, they then understand that they should take care of themselves.
And that's so powerful. But I also feel like that goes against the status quo, right? I don't think a lot of parents are that honest with their children. So how did you find the courage to do that? Was it scary, or was it something that just felt right?
It was, no, scary is the wrong word. It did feel right. It felt natural. I grew up in a house where nobody talked about the problems that were happening. Everyone pretended everything was great. There was a lot of yelling. There was a lot of blaming. There was a lot of toxic, not good stuff. And I have always been the black sheep of the family because I've always just been honest and direct. And I figured out from a very young age that I didn't take my parents seriously. I remember catching them in lies a few times. I remember witnessing them lie to other people. And I just always was like, this doesn't feel right. Like, this doesn't feel like the way that you're supposed to like do life. And I didn't have like healthy relationships modeled for me. And so growing up, my relationships in high school were not healthy with friendships or significant others. That moved right along with me into my early 20s and into college. And I had this nasty habit of always feeling like I was too much for the room instead of embracing that and finding the people that wanted to celebrate that. I somehow was always surrounding myself with the people who wanted to like dull my shine because that's what I knew from growing up. And so my husband and I actually met in college and dated briefly, and we didn't stay together, thank goodness, because it wouldn't have lasted if we had. But we took a 4-year break actually, where we didn't have any communication and we were doing our own thing. And when we reconnected, I was really in a place to have a relationship with someone who wanted to celebrate who I was. And he had always been that person, even the first time we dated. But I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to receive that. I didn't love myself. I spent my entire life being told, you're too loud, you're too dramatic, you're too this, you're too that. A lot of attention because of my looks. And it just has always made me feel wrong. And so, yeah. And so when my husband and when we reconnected, I had just spent about a year. I had moved away. I live in Wisconsin right now, but after college, I moved to Colorado for about a year and just kind of did whatever I wanted to do and hung out and had fun and, was 23. And that was when we reconnected. And I was just in a place where it was like, okay, I'm ready to be loved the way that I like deserve to be loved. And I'm ready to like pour into another person the way that I do, the way that I love. Like everybody has a way that they love, right? From the beginning, we've always wanted to parent different than our parents parented. And so you ask, was it hard to be honest with your children? No, because I wish that my parents had been honest with me, right? Because kids are not stupid. And if I thought some of the decisions that my parents made were like foolish, or I judged them for it, or I was like, I can't even get on your level right now as a kid or as a teenager or as a young adult, I don't want my kids to think I'm like not a good person. It's very important to me that I'm a good person and that we're raising good people. Because I think it starts at home, and I think it's intentional work that has to be done.
Yeah. And if we go back to what you said about learning to love yourself, what would your advice be for women in particular out there who aren't at that point yet, but they sort of have recognized that they need a change? What would be your advice to get to that point?
So it just comes back to that honesty thing. I feel like it all comes back to being honest. Like, you have to be honest with yourself. If you can't be honest with yourself, like, for example, if you lie in therapy, are you going to grow? Nope. If you lie in a relationship, is that relationship going to thrive and be healthy? No. if you lie to your children. Like, you can't live on lies. If you feel something inside and you're like, I am meant for more, there's something in there, I can't quite touch it, but I know there's something in there because I have that feeling. The fastest way to that is honesty. What am I feeling? Where does that come from? Like, for me, I have always had a lot to say, and I've always had really big feelings. And I would love to be like on a stage someday as like a motivational speaker or, whatever. I grew up feeling like I should be smaller. I should shrink, right? You're too dramatic. You're overreacting. That's not really what happened. This, you're too much, Mariah. But that's my superpower.
Right.
Like, being too much is my superpower. But I didn't know that until I started like examining, like, why do you feel like you have to shrink? When it goes against how you physically feel, when it feels bad to make yourself smaller, why is that? Where does that come from? Where did this idea where you're supposed to shrink come from? If it came from your childhood, okay, let's go back to your childhood. Who made you feel like you have to shrink? Your parents. Okay. What's your opinion of your parents in terms of respect, in terms of like, how real is that for you? You kind of have to work backward a little bit before you can work forward, because if you can't understand where those feelings come from, you can't really break down how real they are for you, right? Is it something you were told? Is it something you learned? Is it something you saw? Because a lot of the times it's not something you came up with on your own.
Yeah. And I think we're so conditioned.
Oh, yeah. Especially women, right? You can't be like too big or too small. You can't be too loud or too quiet. You can't be a stay-at-home mom. You can't go to work. Like, there's so many rules and parameters and boxes, but it's all everybody else telling us what we should be doing, when really we should be asking ourselves, what do you want to do?
Right. Yeah.
But there's no room for that, right? There's not a lot of room for that. So my goal when I work with women is, what do you want to do? Like, what's missing right now? Because we can figure out a way to add that in, there's going to be sacrifice. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to change some of those limited beliefs and some of that like old thinking. You're going to have to rewrite the rules that have been written for you, right? Because a lot of the time you get to like midlife and you find yourself like, sort of lost or spiraling. And it's like, well, what rules are you living in your life? And where did those rules come from? Work hard. Okay. Where did you learn that? What does work hard mean to you? Does that mean drive yourself into the ground, always do overtime, never have any time for fun? Is that what work hard is for you? Well, yeah, my dad, blah, blah, blah. He never went on vacation. He never did this. He never did that. Like, there are rules.
Yeah. They're like these unspoken rules. And I think a lot of us don't stop to question whether these rules or beliefs are actually our own. Like you were saying, you really got to be honest with yourself and go, hang on, where did this come from? And quite often, we didn't come up with it.
Right.
So it's
no.
Yeah, almost deconditioning yourself and discovering yourself from the ground up. And you've mentioned honesty over and over through this episode, and I think that's so true. And I want people listening to know, and you've mentioned this, it's not easy. It is hard work. But I think life is going to change if you do that hard work. So can you share, how has your life changed?
Yeah, I mean, I am joyful. I am at peace. I seek out joy in my day-to-day. I've taken the pressure off of myself. It's okay if like a day doesn't go the way that it's planned or the way that you expect to. We are humans. We can adapt. And I've accepted that, okay, I planned on doing this today. Now I have a kid home sick. So now today I'm not working. Today I'm a mom. And if I try to do both, everyone's going to cry and I'm not going to get anything done. I'm not going to be a good mom. I'm not going to be a good coach. So today is just a mom day. And you know what? I'm present. I hang out with my kid. I have fun. I try to like be supportive and be there for them, whatever their sickness is or whatever the issue is. And lean into that, because here's what I've learned. You can wear, or you can have as many hats in your closet as you want to wear. And you can wear all of them, but you cannot wear more than one at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was trying to do. I was burnt out on trying to wear all my hats at the same time. And I felt like a failure because I couldn't be 100% here and 100% here and 100% here. You know, like it was like I was pie and it was all getting divided up. And it sucked. It was awful. I really have just started prioritizing myself. And I think that it looks a little different to everybody because everybody has different hobbies, right? And some people have no hobbies. And that's a really scary place to be. Sometimes I'll talk to these women and it's like, okay, what's like one thing that you can do for yourself this week? One thing. And these women just stare at me. They're like, they can't come up with it. And it's like, okay, well, what do you like to do? And it's like, they can't remember. Okay, what did you used to like to do? You know, and so I've started really considering how I want to spend my time and then doing that. Some women, they work out of the house and they have a really hard time because family dinners don't happen. And there's a lot of guilt that surrounds that. Like meal times are chaos for them because everybody, it's just a mess. And I'm like, you know, what really bothers you about that? And it's like, well, I like my job, but it keeps me away from like this tradition that like I had growing up. You know, my family always sat down at the table and I wanted to do that with my family. And it's like, okay, is it reasonable for your life to spend 7 days a week having a family dinner? She's like, no, it's not. And I was like, okay, well, like what is reasonable? How many days can you do it without having to bend in ways that are uncomfortable? And I think she ended up figuring out that it was like 1 or 2 nights a week they had a family dinner. And it's like, okay, those 2 dinners are so meaningful for your kids. That's so intentional and so magical. It doesn't matter that it's not 7 days a week. 1 or 2 days is better than no days, you know? So it's like a mindset thing. It's not about all of it at once. It's about it's about give and take here and there. And so that is what I have learned. I have learned that I can't be everything to everyone at the same time. I have learned to say no to things that I don't want to do. Like if I'm sitting down and I'm reading a book and everything's quiet and my child comes to me and they're like, will you play this game with me? If I want to play that game, I play the game. If I don't want to, I'm actually reading right now, but you could ask your dad or your sister or whoever, or let me finish this chapter and then I'll take a break and we'll play the game. But it used to be, Mom, and whatever I'm doing, I drop and go run to my kids. It doesn't teach them anything good, you know?
Right. Yeah. And I learning to say no can be really challenging. It's so important. We need to learn to put ourselves first because I think, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, I feel like it allows us to show up in a better way. And in your case, it would allow you to show up as a better mother, a better partner, you know, a better coach in your business because you're learning to put your needs first. Because, you know, it's such a cliche, but if you don't look after yourself, how are you going to look after other people?
Yeah. You know, I tell one of the things that I say in my coaching business is taking care of yourself as part of taking care of your kids.
Yes.
You know, because it is. You can't show up in a meaningful way if you're always stressed and you're always tired and you're always burnt out and you're always a scatterbrain thinking of all the things that you're supposed to do. And so you asked me like, what changed for me or how, like, what's your life like now? And it's like, I am so intentional with my time. And what I mean by that is whatever I'm doing is what I'm meant to be doing. And I actually learned that when I got my coaching license, the program I went through, we had like a group, and the group of 5 women that I was matched up with, we got pretty close. And one of the women was like, my viewpoint and my like motto is whatever I'm doing right now, that's my purpose. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's what I'm doing. If it's grocery shopping, I don't need to worry about the meeting that's coming up. I don't need to worry about whatever. I'm grocery shopping right now. It's a silly example, but it's like, it's so true. So when I am spending time with my kids, I'm with my kids. I'm not thinking about the email that I want to send. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to do late. Like it's a human thing to always be thinking of the next thing, right? Anticipating what's next. That's normal. That's why most people can't meditate, right? Because they can't turn off their brain. But that is also why meditation is so valuable, because it helps you slow down and stay present. And so I know that it's like cliche for me to say that I've learned to be present, but it truly has changed. And if I find myself unable to like sit on the floor and play with my kid, like there's a reason. Like, what is it? What's bothering me? And then I have to really be honest about that. Like, is it that I don't want to be playing right now? Okay, don't play right now. Step away, because being there with, and you don't really want to be like, that doesn't do anything for anyone either. It's a lot of, like I said, it's just a lot of like checking in with yourself. Check your mindset as often as you check your phone.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And most of us check our phones a lot.
Well, and honestly, it's funny because that's one of the other things that I've really dialed back is how much time I spend on social media. Because the thing that was missing in my life was me time. And so I really had to like pull pockets, right? Like, it's not like I somehow figured out how to add 5 extra hours into our day. I had to move things around. I had to change things around. And one of the things that I was doing that was a time suck was scrolling on my phone. And it doesn't make you happy. That's all garbage out there. It's all it makes you do is compare your life to everybody else. Oh, they're doing that. Well, why didn't I think to do that? Or they look so good in that picture. Why can't I dress like that? Or, you know, God only knows. There's a million examples. But social media, it's not like a safe, healthy space for your mind. And I don't feel good after scrolling my phone for 30 minutes. My brain feels like fuzzy, and it's like, it's a waste of time, in my opinion. I think that social media can be a meaningful thing if you have boundaries, healthy boundaries. And one of the things that I realized is that I was wasting time just screwing around on my phone, and it wasn't even making me happy. And so I stopped doing that.
Yeah. Simple as that, right? And
I
feel
mean,
like
you don't miss it when it's not there.
Exactly. And I'd like to know if you agree with this. I think getting clear on what's important to you and your values really helps you make those decisions. It's like, well, you know, what's important to me? Looking after myself, spending time with my kids, my husband, my partner. And is sitting on social media allowing me to do this? Is it giving me joy?
You know, and I really had to work through some of that because social media is also a tool that I use to run my business.
Right.
And so I started to feel really resentful about that because it's like, I don't want to post. I want to coach, but like I can't coach if I don't have clients, and I got to get clients, you know, so there is a little bit of a like give and take in that scenario. I've really tried to, you know, I saw, gosh, who was it? Oh, we had a couple different Thanksgivings. And at one of my Thanksgivings, I saw one of my cousins that I haven't seen in years, but we communicate a lot on social media. And she hugged me and she's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I like saw you yesterday because we, you know, whatever. And I was like, I know, isn't it crazy? And then we didn't really have anything to talk about. And I was like, it's so funny that we don't have anything to talk about because we've seen everything that we've been doing. It's like we've already been talking. And I said, isn't that crazy that that's what social media does to you? You can't even have a conversation with people because it's just wild. I don't know. I tried to dial back my social media presence. It has affected my business in some ways. I'm not moving as quickly as I had hoped to move. But if the trade-off is like peace and like mental clarity, rather than that buzzing noise that I hear from being on social for too long, like those things are good. The work that I can put out there is better because I am better.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, speaking of running a business, there's a lot of expectations on that as well. You know, things I hear as I'm trying to start up my business is, you know, you got to scale. And, you know, you got to grow fast. But like you said, that's not, if it doesn't feel right, if it's not bringing you peace, then why are you doing it?
Yeah, that's very common. People get very burnt out quickly starting new businesses. That's a lot of times why they fail in the beginning, because they get burnt out from like the go, go, go hustle culture that's on social media. I am very much, I feel like I'm like in tune with the universe, and I have a lot of belief in that, like what you put out comes back, and like there's abundance and there's all the things. I believe that when you're on social media, if you're about to post something or put something out there, if you're not in the right space to do it, if you don't feel good about what you're putting out there, if you feel resentful that you have to post, or you like, just, if you don't feel good, that is what is coming across to people. You're not going to find the people that are there to receive you. You're going to find the people that are also feeling crappy, or also, so it's like the universe is always paying attention.
I think that's really good advice. If it doesn't feel right, then what are you doing, right? That's a huge red flag.
Yeah. If you can't intentionally, participate in a way that like feels authentic, it's just not going to work. And that's like a lot of people, social media is like the highlight reel, right? It's all the good stuff. And people say to me, I feel like I gravitate towards you because of how honest you are, and because you show the raw part of it too, and you talk about the difficult stuff. And hey, I'm not for everyone. I know that not everybody can handle how honest I am or how direct I am. I know that people do not want like to share their business or have those difficult conversations. And that's fine. Everyone should do what works for them. But I don't actually believe that not being honest and living a life that doesn't bring you joy is working for anyone. I think it's a lot of just like stuck. You're stuck and you've accepted it.
And a lot of us aren't being honest with ourselves, right? So we're not even acknowledging it.
Yeah, it's just coming out in other ways, right? Bad habits, toxic behavior. You have to, I always, whenever I'm like starting to like feel my body, like when I'm like, okay, I'm getting anxious, or, oh, I feel like I'm getting mad, or I feel like I'm getting resentful, I always ask myself, where is this coming from? Because it's not the situation at hand, ever. It's always something else,
Yeah.
I'm not yelling at my kids right now because, of what they're doing. It's because my husband has worked the last 7 days in a row, and my kids had a week off of school, and one of them is sick and the other one has pink eye, and I'm burnt out. That's why I'm yelling. I'm not yelling because I care about whatever is going on. I am yelling because I need a break.
So true. So true. Let's change tack a bit. A final question. It's a bit of a tradition now on the podcast, is I like to ask my guests, what does freedom mean to you? The podcast is called The Pursuit of Freedom. So this is something I'd like to know your take on.
So freedom to me means that I can be exactly who I am and be joyful. I just want to find joy in my life. I want to raise healthy children, mentally healthy children. And I want to be able to experience my life. That's what freedom means to me, being able to experience my life, because I think it's very easy to get stuck into like the day-to-day routine and not take into consideration that we only get 100 years. There's nothing more. You don't get a second chance. And so if you're in a job that you hate, probably something to reconsider. If you're in a relationship that's not good, probably something to consider. Most people stay stuck because changing is hard, and making those decisions is hard. It's like, what is it costing you to stay in that abusive relationship? What is it costing you to stay at that job that you hate? Because when you get home, you're a monster because you feel all upset about your job, and then you take it out on your kids, and then your kids get older, and what do they remember? The freedom to me means having the ability to seek joy.
That's beautiful. And I just want to go back to something you said, which really resonates with me. You know, what is the cost? I think we often focus on the downsides of making this change. You know, as humans, we're programmed to avoid pain. And so we look at the potential risks and we're like, oh, I can't do that. But if you switch your thinking and go, well, what's the cost of me staying how I am now? I think it makes the decision pretty clear in most cases.
Absolutely. And then what it comes down to is being brave.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have what it takes to change your life? Do you care enough to be the person that you've always wanted to be?
That's powerful. Do you care enough to be the person you want to be? Mariah, thank you so much. I have learnt a lot through this conversation. Being honest with yourself, asking yourself, how real are my feelings right now, especially when it centers around guilt. There's no right way to be a mother. Looks different for everybody. And, you know, freedom looks different for everybody too. So it was beautiful to hear your take on it. And, you know, your thoughts on thinking about the cost of your decisions, I think is so important. So once again, thank you so much. I hope to have you on the show again because I know you have so much more wisdom to share. It's been an absolute blast. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for asking meaningful questions. I just appreciate the opportunity to have these conversations because they're important. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If this episode resonated with you at all, could I please ask that you share it with a friend who you think could get value from it? And whilst you're doing that, make sure you follow and subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss another episode. And whilst you're following or subscribing, please leave us a rating, preferably 5 stars, and also a written review. Doing each of these things is going to help this podcast reach more people and impact more lives, which is, at the end of the day, is what we're here to do. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Remember, you matter, you're worth it, and you are so, so capable. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week.